Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Young. I'm just going to walk you through a brief presentation of British Columbia because it's a key battleground in this upcoming election. So the key thing to drive anything in terms of taxation for government is GDP. I'm only going to focus on in this presentation is more the private sector in terms of its growth potential and creating jobs as part of the policies that would drive those sectors. But what I want to do is lay it out in terms of looking at GDP for BC, which is about 230 billion. There's some good factors that you can put into perspective with BC. It's a pretty diversified economy, especially when you get into the different areas from Prince George to Kelowna to Vancouver Island to Vancouver up to Prince Rupert. It's pretty diversified in terms of from an agricultural to forestry to even some advanced manufacturing, what we're seeing in the British Columbia area around aerospace and high tech. So it's pretty well diversified. And that being said, it's basically has a dependency on the resources, but there's some critical drivers in there that are driving some of the high tech area that will drive some of the policy decisions coming up in this election. So let's talk about exports. Now, in exports in particular case for BC, on total GDP, they're about 15% of the total GDP. Now, that being said, I'm going to stop there for about 10 seconds here and specify here. BC is very connected at the hip to Asia Pac. So Asia Pac means China, Japan, all those other countries in there. Now, with the new Trans-Pacific deal, that allows them to have better access to markets into Japan, as also into Vietnam, also into just other aspects of the Asia Pac area. Now, there's a lot of talk about what's going to drive that. Well, a lot of it's going to be driven by their forestry, a lot of it's going to be driven by aerospace, a lot of it's going to be driven by energy products. And I'll get into more specifics as we move forward with policy, but it's very critical to understand that when you're talking about the NDP, they're anti-trade, so anything to do with exports will be kiboshed under the NDP government. The Liberal Party, typically, whatever deals are signed by the Conservatives, they usually honor. Now, what they don't do is they don't typically move forward with trade deals at any sort of urgency. So I'll get into more specific on those terms as we move forward. Let's talk about unionization, because these are the drivers, and they're doing most of the anti-slams against Stephen Harper and his government. And if you look at BC, its unionization ratio since 1981 has dropped significantly. So there's less and less private sector unions there. And the private sector unions that you're seeing there are most predominantly dominating there are Unifor. And Uniform is kind of a strange union because they've been very vocal about automotive, but they have yet to say anything how the benefits of the TPP is on forestry, aerospace, and mining. And yet those sectors are pretty well supported by Unifor. So the questions you need to ask yourself is, why are they so narrow focused on automotive? Because it's a way for them to hammer the government and keep voting ridings. And that's the thing you need to think about when you see that. Let's talk about TPP comments. I picked 4 sectors here. Why? Because these are predominantly the export sectors that drive the BC economy in terms of exports. Both the mining, forestry, aerospace, and the agricultural sector in general supports TPP because it opens up markets for them that they would never normally have access to. So that's being not discussed enough in the media in terms of how business supports it. All you're hearing is the anti-rhetoric from the unions. What you need to do is go out and read what the industries say, because it's the industries that support their constituents. It's those constituents that support jobs. Let's talk about small business. BC is one of those provinces, like a few others, where a bulk of the economy is driven by small business. So on the left-hand side, I've discussed it in terms of the volume of the BC. Now what I've done on the right-hand side is I've talked about 2 specific government and approaches. The NDP will kind of tell you that they're for small business, because what they're saying is, we'll reduce the corporate rate, but we'll come after you for a higher payroll tax, more regulation, and we'll come at an overall cap and trade policy. Now, that's dangerous for small businesses, because now you're introducing more cost as well as more regulation, which adds cost to those things, to their business. The Liberal are about the same. They're actually hiking CPP. They're actually doing another different approach. They're kind of saying that some small businesses are tax shelter. So, do you really trust a liberal coming to your business and trying to tell you whether or not it's a legitimate business or not? Do you? That's the questions that you need to ask yourself, because that's part of their hidden agenda, is to kind of go after people on a tactical way to kind of take that income from you. The CPC party, the Conservative Party of Canada, will have a targeted EI cut for small businesses to help them keep that extra cash in the business. They actually plan a corporate tax cut, but it's phased in over a period of 3 years. Again, just to allow the Treasury to basically absorb that cut, but also provide extra money in. They'll hold the line to payroll taxes. In other words, they won't try to increase them as the other parties will. So the decision you have to make is get away from the rhetoric that you're hearing from the different parties and really think what party is actually going to have the right plan to create jobs, keep a line on spending, and also watch my taxes. And the only party doing that is the Conservative Party of Canada.